skies. But when Sarah leaned in with that syrupy voice and said, "Oops, forgot your ticket. Go home. Maybe next trip," I felt the truth land like cold metal against my ribs. Around me at JFK, families were wheeling glittering suitcases toward gates, and Christmas lights blinked like a promise I wasn't allowed to touch. I had paid $33,000 for 5 people to see Paris at Christmas. And somehow I was the only one who didn't exist on paper. My son stared at his boarding pass as if it were scripture. My grandchildren pretended their phones were oxygen masks. And I thought, so this is the shape of betrayal when it wears your last name. 2 months earlier, I had been in my garden in Westchester at 9 a.m., cup of coffee warm in my hands, when Michael called with that charming tilt he's carried since he could talk his way into extra cookies. "Mom, what if we did something special for the holidays," he said, and the way he painted it, Paris with the Champs-Élysées glowing, croissants at dawn, the Louvre at noon, made the widowed part of me sit up straight. After your husband dies, invitations feel like rafts thrown at just the right moment. You don't check the rope, you grab on. When I asked about timing, he answered, December 15th through the 23rd. And when I asked about the cost, he said, around $30,000 for everything. But think of the memories. I said what I had always said to my family when love dressed itself as need. Yep. Sarah took the reins with blinding efficiency. "Leave everything to me. Linda, I'm great with bookings," she sang, and for a while I let her voice be the elevator music to my trust. She collected my credit card, then my passport photo, then my patience with the phrase, "Don't worry about it," smoothing over every question I had with a practiced smile that had fooled me for 16 years. When I offered to help, she said, "You just focus on packing. It's a surprise vacation for you," too, as if secrecy were a ribbon instead of a red flag. The second flag arrived wrapped in politeness. Small change in the hotel. Overbooked. Nothing to worry about, and she rattled off a new confirmation number while I wrote it down like a good soldier of generosity. The third flag, the one that cut through the fog, I heard by accident at the mall food court. My hands full of last-minute scarves and gloves. Sarah's sister said, "It's cruel, even for you." And Sarah laughed that brittle laugh that makes glass nervous and replied, "She'll finally learn money doesn't buy a place where she's not wanted." The words didn't pierce me so much as push me underwater. I drove home in a trance, told myself I had misheard, then ironed Michael's childhood voice over it like a patch. "Mom, wouldn't it be amazing if we all went to Paris together?" At the gate at 3 p.m., Sarah swung her designer carry-on like a bell and said, "These things happen with international flights. You understand, right? We can't miss our connection." Michael avoided my eyes the way people avoid mirrors in bad lighting. Jake's face flushed with the private shame of boys who know better. Emma stared at her screen, a statue of escape. The old version of me, the one who believed the loudest love was the one that paid the bill, would have pleaded, offered to buy another ticket on the spot, begged for the dignity they had already decided I didn't deserve. Instead, I heard my voice come out calm. "Have a wonderful time, sweetheart," I told my son, and the word sweetheart tasted like the last spoonful of something I no longer needed. In the taxi back to Westchester, the December light slid over the river like a blade, and I learned the difference between reaction and response. A reaction is a match thrown at a dry forest. A response is water measured into a kettle and set to boil. By the time we turned onto my street at 4 p.m., I knew exactly which stove I would light, which pot I would reach for, and how evenly I would pour. I set the kettle on at 4:47 p.m., the exact length of that taxi ride still ticking in my bones, and opened my laptop at the kitchen table the way Robert once opened ledger books quietly, decisively, as if truth could be balanced if you were stubborn about the math. My inbox was a neat little museum of everything Sarah had ever sent me these past 2 months. Hotel confirmations in my name, flights purchased with my card, tours with glossy brochures attached, dinner reservations with notes like window if possible, as if Paris were a stage she'd already rehearsed. I whispered, "All right then," to the cursor, and began where every house is held together with the record-keeping. The hotel came first 2 adjoining suites at a place with velvet on the lobby chairs and a chandelier that thinks very highly of itself. I dialed, waded through a maze of music and accents, and a woman named Marie answered with the kind of kindness that makes you feel known. "Madame Walker." "Of course." "You wish to modify?" she asked, and I said, "Actually, I need to cancel entirely. There's been a family emergency," and listened while she typed. "You purchased our flexible rate," she said, relief folding into her voice. "No penalty if canceled 24 hours before check-in." I looked at the clock, 5:12 p.m., and said, "Please proceed." And when she promised a full credit to my card within 3 to 5 business days, I thought, sometimes life really does leave a door unlocked for the person who paid for the key. The flights were harder 5 business-class seats to Paris Charles de Gaulle, the kind of luxury you buy when you're trying to prove love can be measured in legroom. The hold music stretched for long minutes, the sort that make people give up. But I had spent 35 years with a man who reconciled every column until it balanced to the penny. I could wait. When I finally reached a supervisor, I used every confirmation number Sarah had forwarded to me like confetti. And the supervisor sighed and said there would be penalties. But even after the fees, you'll see approximately $14,000 returned. Mrs. Walker. I thanked her the way Midwestern girls thank bus drivers and moved down the list. Click by click, I dismantled their itinerary: the river cruise on the Seine, the private guide at the Louvre, the day trip to Versailles, with a driver who probably wore white gloves, the champagne tasting that had Burgundy, cellar tour included in bold letters. I even called the restaurant where Michael wanted Christmas dinner and said, "Plans changed. I'm so sorry." And imagined the empty chair where he would have raised a glass and declared family a tradition, while pretending I was not the tradition that put every roof over his head. Each cancellation email chimed into my inbox like a small door closing with a clean latch. By 7 p.m., the trip no longer existed anywhere except their expectations. The note was the last piece, my favorite piece, not because of cruelty, but because of timing. I wrote it in a voice that did not shake. Since you did not want me on the vacation, I assumed you did not want my money either. I have canceled everything I paid for. Consider it a lesson in consequences. Enjoy Paris if you can afford it. Then I drove back to the airport at 8:15 p.m., a cardigan over my coat like armor, and found their gate just as boarding began. Security was a river of people. They were ahead, bodies turned toward the jetway, their carry-ons at their feet like obedient dogs. I did not touch them. I touched the bag Sarah had left tucked beneath Michael's seat, slid the zipper as softly as a prayer, tucked the envelope into her makeup pouch, and slipped away. It took 30 seconds to return the world to its proper owner. At 2:47 a.m., my phone rattled on the nightstand. Michael's first text said, "Mom, call me immediately. There's been some kind of mistake with the hotel." And a half-minute later, "They're saying our reservation was canceled. We're in the lobby with our luggage and the kids are crying." I turned the phone face down and let sleep reclaim me like a tide. Morning arrived at 7:30 a.m., with the smell of pancakes and butter the way Robert liked them. And while the messages multiplied confusion, panic, anger, I ate slowly and thought about how quiet a house can feel when the only person you owe is yourself. By noon, the buzzing had turned desperate, like a hornet trapped behind glass. 7 missed calls, 3 voicemails, all stitched together by guilt and entitlement. I listened to one, just to confirm what I already knew. "Mom," Michael said, his voice cracking, "we can't find another room anywhere. Please just call me back. This isn't funny anymore." The next message was Sarah's, sharper, full of that trembling anger that comes when someone realizes the game board has flipped. "Linda, I don't know what you think you're proving, but you need to fix this. We're in a foreign country with 2 children. You're being cruel." She said cruel like she'd trademarked the word. I made myself another cup of tea and watched the snow begin to fall outside the kitchen window, thinking how strange it was that peace could arrive on the same day someone else's chaos bloomed. For decades, my life had been shaped by the soft tyranny of giving checks for mortgages, tuition, repairs, always framed as love, never as dependence. Now, finally, I was watching what happened when the faucet turned off. Around 3 p.m., my phone lit up again, Emma's name, trembling across the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something about that name, my granddaughter's name, the only innocent in this circus, made my thumb betray me. Grandma. Her voice was small, frayed. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm really confused. Mom and Dad keep fighting about hotels and money, and Dad's been on the phone all morning. Mom said you ruined everything. Did you?" I closed my eyes. "No, sweetheart, I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped paying for something I was never invited to." The silence that followed was long enough for me to hear her breathing. Then she said, "They left you at the airport, didn't they?" I hesitated, then told her the truth. "Yes, they did," she whispered. "Oh my God, that's why you canceled everything." I told her it wasn't revenge, it was education. Actions have consequences. Emma, they needed to learn that. She exhaled softly. "Jake keeps asking why you don't love us anymore." My throat tightened. "I love you more than anything," I said, "and that's why I'm not saving them right now." Before she hung up, she whispered, "I love you, Grandma." And something inside me cracked open and settled into place at the same time. 3 days passed in near silence. The calls slowed, then stopped. Every so often, I'd receive a short email from Emma typed from a hotel lobby computer. I guessed. "We moved to a cheaper place. Mom's trying to get help from the embassy. Dad's boss won't send money. Aunt Rebecca said we made our bed." I could almost hear her trying to sound grown up, holding the chaos together like a tiny bridge. During those days, I rediscovered the stillness I'd misplaced years ago. I rearranged the living room furniture, hung the paintings I'd bought months before, and for the first time in forever, read a novel simply because I wanted to. By Wednesday evening, the snow outside had turned thick and soft. My best friend Beth showed up at my door with a bottle of champagne and a grin that could light up the whole neighborhood. "To liberation," she said, kicking off her boots. We sat in my living room with cheese and crackers, and she listened wide-eyed as I told her everything. Sarah's laugh at the mall, the note in the makeup bag, the voicemails, the call from Emma. "Linda," she said between bursts of laughter, "you magnificent woman, I've waited 16 years for this." I laughed too, though something in my chest still ached. "They'll figure something out," I said, maybe to reassure myself more than her. At 9:10 p.m., my phone rang again, Michael's number. I didn't pick up. His message was quiet, flat. "Mom, I know you're ignoring me. What we did was wrong. Sarah thought it was just a prank, a harmless way to travel without complications. But it was cruel. We're trying to get home. I'll never ask you for money again. Just, please don't punish the kids for our mistakes." It was the first time I'd heard accountability in his voice in years. I almost felt relief until the next call came. The number was foreign, the voice French. "Madame Walker," the man said. "This is Inspector Dubois with the Paris Police Prefecture. Your family has been detained for leaving a hotel without paying their bill. The air left my lungs. Are they hurt? I asked. Non, madame. Only embarrassed, he said dryly. They owe 2,000 euros. I looked at Beth, who was shaking her head so fast her earrings caught the light. Don't you dare, she mouthed. But then I imagined Emma and Jake sitting in a police station at midnight, hearing words they didn't understand, watching their parents argue with strangers. I'll pay it, I told the inspector quietly. Just the room, nothing extra. He promised they'd be released within the hour. When I hung up, Beth groaned. Linda, you just rewarded them again. I sipped my tea and said, No, I rescued my grandchildren. There's a difference. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure anymore. The next morning, my phone buzzed again, Michael's name glowing faintly against the light of dawn. His voice was softer this time, worn thin. Mom, we're out. I know you paid the bill. Thank you. You didn't have to, but thank you. I could hear the exhaustion in him, the kind that strips arrogance from a man. We've arranged economy flights. My boss advanced the money. We'll be home by Christmas Eve. I listened quietly, letting his words hang in the air before I answered. I didn't pay that bill for you. Michael, I paid it for Emma and Jake. Don't confuse the two. He hesitated. I know. I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it. There was sincerity there, tired. Broken sincerity, but sincerity nonetheless. Then let's see what you do with that sorry, I said, and ended the call. They came back to New York on December 24th, stepping into the same winter air they'd left me in 2 weeks before. I didn't go to the airport this time. I didn't even ask. I spent Christmas morning alone, by choice. Drinking coffee in my quiet kitchen while the radio played old carols and the snow whispered against the glass. For the first time in years, my home didn't feel lonely, it felt peaceful. It was the peace of a storm finally past, of boundaries drawn with ink instead of tears. But that peace trembled when my phone rang again on December 26th. Emma. Her voice was small, heavy. Grandma, can I come see you, just me? Not Mom and Dad? I felt something in me loosen. Of course, sweetheart. Do you need me to pick you up? No, she said. Mom's driving me, but she wants to talk to you first. An hour later, Sarah's car rolled into my driveway, tires crunching over the snow. I watched from the window as Emma stepped out, clutching her backpack. Sarah stayed behind the wheel, engine still running, until she rolled the window down and called across the yard. Linda, we need to talk. I opened the front door but didn't move any closer. We have nothing to discuss. Sarah. She raised her voice, her breath fogging in the cold. You nearly destroyed our family. Do you have any idea what you put us through? I almost laughed at the audacity. What I put you through. You stole my money and left me at the airport. We weren't stealing, she snapped. We just wanted a little space to enjoy our vacation without worrying about your needs. I smiled, then tired, but sharp. My needs. Sarah, I'm 68, not 98. The only thing you'd have needed to accommodate was treating me with basic respect. Emma shifted nervously between us, then took a step toward the house. Mom, just go, you're making it worse. Sarah's voice cracked. Emma, get back in the car right now. We're not done talking. I stepped forward, calm but firm. Emma is 16. She's welcome to visit her grandmother whenever she wants. I met Sarah's eyes, steady as ice. Drive away. Sarah. For a long, brittle moment. I thought she'd argue. Then she slammed the gear into reverse, the car tires squealing as she sped down the street, leaving a trail of angry silence behind. Inside, Emma collapsed onto the sofa and began to cry. Grandma, they've been fighting nonstop since we got home. Dad keeps apologizing. Mom keeps screaming. She says you humiliated her. He says he should have stopped her. I sat beside her, handed her tissues. And what do you think? She wiped her eyes and said, "I think you finally did what I've wanted to do my whole life, stand up to her." She stayed for hours that day, drinking hot chocolate and telling me things I hadn't known about their finances, their arguments, how Sarah called the money I gave them guilt money. When Emma mentioned that, something in me snapped into clarity. "What did she show you?" I asked. "Her bank statements," Emma said, her voice trembling with anger. "She wanted me to see how much you've given us. $47,000 last year alone. Grandma, mortgage, cars, school, groceries, all from you." She looked up at me, eyes shining. "She said it proved you owe us, but all I saw was how much you've done for us without getting anything back." I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange mix of shame and relief. "I did it because I loved you all," I said. "I thought helping meant holding the family together." Emma reached for my hand. "You were holding us together." "Grandma. She just made you believe you weren't." Her words landed like forgiveness. That night, after I dropped her back home, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her voice saying guilt money, seeing Sarah's smirk at the airport, hearing Michael's quiet apology. By sunrise, the decision had formed cleanly in my mind. Love could forgive, but it didn't have to fund. At 9 a.m., I called my attorney, James Morrison, and said, "I want to make some changes." His pen scratched quietly while I explained everything Paris, the lies, the years of enabling disguised as love. When I was done, he said softly, "Linda, this is elder financial abuse. What you're doing now isn't spite, it's self-preservation." I told him I wanted to set up education trusts for Emma and Jake, protected so their parents couldn't touch them, and the rest, he asked. "Everything else goes to charity." I said, "Michael and Sarah will get nothing." James arranged everything within the weak new will, notarized, witnessed, sealed like the final chapter of a long book I'd been too afraid to close. When I left his office that afternoon, the sky over Manhattan was pale and cold, and for the first time in years, my breath didn't feel borrowed. Freedom has a sound, it isn't loud. It's the absence of begging. On New Year's Eve, I invited Michael and Sarah to the house. I told them it was important, and they came because money has its own gravitational pull. They arrived separately but left the same trail of tension behind them. Michael looked smaller somehow, shoulders slumped, eyes heavy with that blend of guilt and fear only men who've lost control seem to carry. Sarah walked in stiff and sharp, her perfume arriving 10 seconds before her voice. "So," she said, glancing around the living room like she expected hidden reporters, "this is the big family meeting." I said evenly, "Take a seat." I let the silence stretch before I spoke, the clock ticking softly at 7 p.m., just loud enough to mark the weight of what was about to happen, what happened in Paris. I began, clarified something for me, for years. I've given and given mortgage payments, car loans, tuition, gifts over $200,000 in 5 years. I didn't think twice because I believed I was helping family. Michael rubbed his temples. "Mom, please, we don't need to." "We do," I interrupted. "We need to. Because what you did showed me something ugly. You don't see me as family. You see me as a resource." Sarah crossed her arms, her tone dripping with that brittle, practiced indignation. "You're twisting everything. We wanted a peaceful trip, that's all. You make everything about control." I laughed softly. "Sarah, I was paying for the trip. If anyone was controlled, it was me." Her mouth opened, but I raised a hand. "And if you think leaving me at the airport was about peace, then you've mistaken cruelty for independence." I reached for the envelope on the coffee table and slid it toward Michael. Inside is a letter from my attorney. Effective immediately. There will be no more financial support. No more checks, no more emergencies. You're adults. You can live like it. He opened it, his eyes darting across the page, and I watched the color drain from his face. You changed your will, he whispered. Emma and Jake's education is covered. But Sarah snatched it from him and scanned faster. Her voice rose, sharp enough to pierce glass. You left everything else to charity. Are you out of your mind? I met her gaze. Calm. Grounded. No. I'm just done buying love. I'm leaving something behind that actually helps people who value kindness more than convenience. The room erupted. Sarah stood, pacing, ranting about betrayal, about image, about how I was humiliating the family. Michael tried to mediate, his words tumbling out too quickly to sound sincere. But I just sat there, letting their noise break against me like waves against stone. Finally. Sarah said the line she'd been rehearsing since Paris. Fine, if that's how you want it, you'll never see Emma or Jake again. Her voice trembled at the end, like she'd expected it to hit harder. I leaned forward slightly. Sarah, Emma's 16. In 2 years, she'll be 18. She'll choose who she wants to see. Jake won't be far behind. Are you really willing to be the mother who kept them from their grandmother over money? The silence that followed was thick enough to stand on. Sarah looked away first. They left a few minutes later, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I didn't flinch. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat back on the sofa, and watched the snow falling outside the window. Midnight came quietly, no countdown, no confetti, just the soft hum of peace returning. 6 months later, that peace had settled into my bones. This morning, I sat in my garden, coffee steaming in the early sun, reading a letter from Emma postmarked from her college dorm. She'd written, Grandma, I got into the photography program. I'm using the scholarship you set up. Thank you for teaching me that love doesn't come with price tags. Jake calls every Sunday, his voice bright, telling me about soccer games and art projects. Michael and I exchange polite birthday cards, now nothing more, nothing less. As for Sarah, she never calls. I imagine she's still rehearsing her anger somewhere. But that's her burden, not mine. I've learned something simple and true. The people who love you don't need to be paid to prove it. They show up, they listen, they stay. Everyone else is just sending invoices disguised as affection. I've stopped paying those bills, and for the first time in my life, I am rich in all the ways that matter. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Linda's place? Your voice matters here.